Hello, everybody. This is Nick Totero, Professor of Information Technology and Computer Science at Lakeland Community College, and this is digital forensics, specifically network forensics. Now, throughout these series of videos, we have to bring back some of our logic or some of our thoughts that we knew from Networking Plus days or other networking courses, right? Or it's just not going to make sense. Um, let's start with a connection. When one computer or one digital device needs to make a connection to another digital device. Now, generally speaking, we have two types of connection. One is called a connection-orientated protocol. The other is a connectionless orientated protocol. In the TCP/IP world, TCP is connection-orientated, meaning that when two digital devices need to talk to each other and they establish a TCP connection, transmission control protocol connection, it's kind of like sending a registered letter in the mail. I send a letter and I expect an acknowledgement back. I send another letter, I expect acknowledgement back. I send a datagram, I send a packet, I expect an acknowledgement back. Now, the really good thing about a connection-oriented protocol is you're almost guaranteed that what you are sending is going to get to its destination. The other type of protocol is what we call connectionless. Now, it's a little bit more confusing because we're going to be looking at some log files, but a connectionless IP is a connectionless protocol. UDP, user datagram protocol, I'm not going to worry about where they fall in the OSI reference model. Those are connectionless protocols. That's like sending out Christmas cards. It's a holiday coming up. You send out 100 Christmas cards. You're not expecting everybody to acknowledge that, hey, Nick, I got your Christmas card, I got your holiday card. If 98 of them got through, that's fine. Think about streaming. Think about you go up to YouTube or Netflix or whatever and you initiate a stream. Chances are that is going to be connectionless, meaning they're just going to start streaming the information to you. And if they drop a packet or two, who cares, right? So this is how networks have always been based. Connection-orientated protocol, TCP, I send a packet, I expect an acknowledgement back. Connectionless, UDP, IP, I just send. And if it comes back, fine. If not, that's okay too. Well, in the world of networking, we would like logs that would tell us who established connections on our network. Now, fortunately, Zeek will actually, and other, again, we're just using Zeek as an example. Zeek and other network analyzers will tell us who those connections are being made by, whether they be connection-orientated or connectionless orientated. So now let's go up to my screen and let's take a look at a sample log. Again, this is not about Zeek. This is about looking at particular logs. Alrighty. One of the interesting things about Zeek is because it's open source, they will format their logs different ways. You can format their logs, again, not a Zeek course, you can format the logs as tab separated values. In these particular examples, they tend to recommend JSON because we can look them on web pages. JSON can be converted to other particular types of format. So again, one of the nice things is that we can, or Zeek can spit things out in different types of formats. We're not going to worry about that too much. And they, in this particular site, they show how we can look at these particular logs, but we're in pretty good shape that we'll just look at the log. Now, here is the particular log we're going to look at. And this first one, all right, here, let me make it a little bit bigger. There we go. A couple things are going on here in this log. One, you have the TS. That is just a timestamp, and you see this really funky timestamp here. That's Unix time. I forgot how Unix time works specifically, but there's a date and time. I should look that up and remember it. There's a date and time that all Unix systems say that is the beginning of the Unix Linux universe. So we have a date and timestamp down here. It should tell us somewhere around here. It'll tell us the specifics of that particular date. Oh, okay. So this log was produced. Here it is. This log was produced Friday, June 5th at 2:39 p.m. 59 seconds, the year 2020. Right? Not a big deal. But for us, that is the format. But in a log, it is an incredibly big deal that we have a timestamp that a connection was established. Right? Remember, we're looking at these forensics logs. Maybe we're looking for a threat analysis. Maybe we were a victim of a threat or something. So we have a date and timestamp. We have a UID. That's a unique identifier of this connection. Has nothing to do with the TCP IP, no IP address. This is just a not randomly generated UID, but a unique identifier for this particular connection. Now, again, in the Zeek world, we could look at other logs and potentially look or do a search for that unique identifier. So maybe in another log, we can look for, was this connection, did they initiate it using DNS or something along that? So this is just a unique identifier for this particular connection that may be relevant in other logs. Now, here's the stuff that we really begin to grab hold of. This is the originator, right? Network address 192.168.4.76. They initiated the connection. They say, I want to connect to this computer right here, 31.3.245.133. So we have the initiator and we have the responder, and that's what this ID is basically saying. So we have, again, we have the client, we have the server. We have the initiator, we have the responder or the provider. It was done, wow, look at this. It was done with port 80. We should immediately know from previous events that port 80 is HTTP. So this appears, and it even says the service that was launched was HTTP. What does that tell us? That tells us this was most likely a web browser, right? The computer at 192.168.4.76 went to the web browser. Don't know how they got this particular address because we're not looking at DNS yet, but it said, okay, I got that address. Now I'm trying to establish a connection with that address. You will notice that it's a TCP connection, so it's connection orientated. HTTP is a connection orientated, meaning I send a packet, I'm expecting an acknowledgement back. And then we have other information that would be associated here. We're not really too concerned with the additional information. These start getting into very Zeek, very networking type things. For a log file, though, for our forensics investigation, we've discovered a lot. We have a date and timestamp of the connection. We have a unique identifier that we can look at other log files about. We have the originator, 192.168.4.76. We have a responder, 31.3.245.133. We were using HTTP, and that was port 80, and it's a TCP port. So a lot of little stuff going on that provides us particular information. Let's say, I'll just make something up. Let's say we discover through investigation that the responding IP address is a well-known server that has a lot of viruses associated with it, right? So maybe in our initial search of a network breach or something like that, or a lot of viruses, we say, okay, we now know that this person here has been going to that particular website, or at least went to that particular website, and maybe that was the root cause of our particular problem. Now, you can go up to the Zeek organization and look at some of these files. They're interesting, but again, log files aren't the most exciting thing in the world. But they kind of break things down here. The duration of this established communication was 0.25411 blah, 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 the amount of seconds. That is not how long the individual was on that website, right? If we go here, the duration, that was not how long the person was on the website. That is how long it took to establish that connection, right? So we're not really looking at, oh, he was a fraction of a second. No, nobody's on a website, even if we get to a website by accident, a fraction of a second. It is the duration. Oh no, it's how long the conversation lasted. Now, it's still not the duration of how long they were on the website. It's the connection. So if I go to a website and I establish that immediate connection, that took fractions of a second. But what if I then just walk away, right? So it's not really watching how long I've been there, just how long that initial connection conversation lasts, not the how long they were on that particular website. Again, this is a Zeek type thing when we're talking about, but we would have to be aware of that as we're investigating. So we established a connection. Now, in this particular task, we established a connection using TCP, HTTP, port 80. We had the two devices. In other videos, how did we find that particular information? Where else? Where else could that information be provided? Or what are some of the other things that are associated on a network? So that being said, let's go out and learn something.